I'm going to ask you to weigh in on a $1.5 trillion question using the comment section below. But first, I'm going to rewind and share something that happened last summer. In August, I posted a 60-second video that went viral. In it, I petitioned people to call their Capitol buildings and petition their state representatives on behalf of the Prime Act, a bill that, if passed into law, would allow me as a small farmer to sell meat processed at my local butcher. Something that is currently illegal, believe it or not. In fact, if I try to sell you this beautiful pasture-raised leg of lamb grown on my land here in rural East Texas and processed by my small-town butcher just 15 miles away, I could be federally prosecuted, hit with massive fines, potentially go to jail. This is because the meat is missing this, a USDA inspection stamp. This stamp comes when meat is processed at a USDA-approved facility with a USDA agent overseeing every step of the process. If I have this stamp, I can sell this leg of lamb to anyone in the USA. But without it, I can sell this leg of lamb to no one. But what's the problem with that? Well, compared to my small town butcher, USDA facilities are very expensive and much harder to access. To process a lamb at a USDA meat processor, I have to drive almost 2 hours round trip and pay $200 to process the lamb. That's versus my local butcher, which is a 40-minute round trip and an $80 processing fee. Now, it's often argued that USDA oversight is necessary to ensure consumer safety, but I want you to keep in mind here that there have been no records of any foodborne illnesses traced back to these small-town butchers since 2012. But back to that viral video last summer. That video pushed hundreds of phone calls to Capitol buildings across the USA and ultimately contributed to a version of the Prime Act being inserted into the 2023 Farm Bill, which seemed like a major win until I started to dig into the Farm Bill itself and found that using the Farm Bill to promote food freedom legislation might be like renting office space in a burning building. But I want to know if you agree, so listen to these facts and leave your honest opinion in the comment section below. The first Farm Bill was constructed in 1933 as part of FDR's New Deal and in response to the economic collapse of the Great Depression and simultaneous agricultural collapse during the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. Now, to this point, agricultural subsidies did not exist, and the USDA's power was largely limited to seed collection and the distribution of information, which is a sharp contrast to today, where in most cases you cannot even sell a piece of meat at the retail level without the USDA's stamp of approval. The Farm Bill of 1933, otherwise known as the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1933, was aimed at regulating commodity prices, mostly grain, by subsidizing farmers to grow or not grow certain crops based on projected market demand. It also granted the USDA a huge amount of power as it became the intermediary agency for a massive amount of funding. An article by the Mercatus Center cites, the USDA's mission has grown far beyond its original intent when signed into law by President Lincoln. The initial purpose was simply to distribute agricultural information and to procure and distribute foreign seeds. This radically changed during the Great Depression. The Farm Bill has become a true behemoth over the past 100 years. From a dollar standpoint, the Farm Bill is the second largest piece of legislation regularly passed by the U.S. government. In fact, the 2023 Farm Bill proposed a spending budget of $1.5 trillion over the course of 5 years, up from $800 billion in 2018. And as I dug deeper, I found out that only 10 to 15% of this funding goes directly to farmers. 81% goes to food stamps under the SNAP program, 8% goes to crop insurance for farmers, 6% goes to conservation, 5% goes to commodity programs, and when it comes to the actual farmer portion of the spending, it appears as though all of the funding, again, flows through the USDA. So something like the Prime Act, which is actually asking the USDA to not be involved in local meat processing, may or may not work so well. What's more is that article by Mercatus.org cites that 90% of the agricultural subsidies in the Farm Bill go to the largest 20% of farms in the USA. And, quote, legislators who voted for the 2014 Farm Bill received up to 3 times the amount of campaign donations from agribusiness PACs than legislators who voted against it. The article goes on to cite that rather than solving agricultural problems, the Farm Bill distorts a beneficial exchange of goods and services. We get political gamesmanship controlled by special interests who pay for access to politicians using the excess profits they've earned from their government-granted privileges. Now, I recently had a 1-hour conversation with Congressman Thomas Massie himself. You can get access to the uncut version of that 1-hour interview below. But during that conversation, Thomas Massie said that the left pushes extremely hard for food stamps. And I sat back and I wondered why. Why does the left wing of politics push so hard for food stamps? And a quote came to mind as I was thinking along those lines, and it's by Henry Kissinger. It says, "Control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control people. If you control access to $1.2 trillion worth of food, you control an extremely large group of people." So this is the $1.5 trillion question I have for you. Should we, as small farmers, pursue legislative reform through a bill like the Farm Bill? Or should we be protesting the Farm Bill for a total remapping of how the funds are allocated or even spent at all, considering the fact that we're running a $1 trillion budget deficit every year here in the USA? Vote below, though, and I will be interested to hear and read your opinions in the comments below. For those wondering, the 2023 Farm Bill never passed, and all existing hopes for the Prime Act died with it. Currently, the US government is working under sort of an extended version of the 2018 Farm Bill. If you found this video helpful, please share it and watch this one next, where I talk about how the live market for pigs crashed and how the live market for beef cattle may soon follow.